We can speak now to chemical weapons expert Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, who's in London, with more. Hi, Hamish. Thanks for speaking to us. First, help us understand, if you can, more of the details and kind of the nuances in this report. When it says chlorine was likely used, what constitutes likely?
Well, I think it's pretty much as unequivocal as the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons get. So I think from what we can say from that and the fact that they took samples off the cylinders that were dropped from hospitals that showed chlorine and also biomedical samples and others, that we're pretty convinced that chlorine was used and dropped from helicopters. I think perhaps even more interesting in this report, they also say that chemical tests identified 3 precursor chemicals that are also used in the nerve agent sarin. So there's a suggestion this was a chlorine and sarin attack, but the OPCW are as unequivocal as they can be by saying it's chlorine. They don't attribute it, they don't say who's to blame, but it's pretty certain that it was the regime, as this came from helicopters, and the rebels do not possess helicopters.
Okay, you say it's clear that the regime was responsible. Does the forensic proof in this report actually provide then enough to act on in response?
Well, probably not. I mean, the OPCW are not there to attribute blame in these cases. Their role is the scientific role of identifying what chemicals were being used. It'll be now up to the UN Security Council to interpret those results. But from all that we've seen, and we've seen many chlorine attacks like this in the recent months, and of course we've seen the major chlorine and possibly sarin attack in Douma in April, which we're waiting for the results for. It's pretty conclusive that the regime are responsible, but no doubt any UN Security Council resolution would be vetoed by the Russians. So whether there are any sanctions to this, who knows? But as we know, that Britain, the US and France did attack the Syrian regime chemical weapon capability after the Douma attack, and I understand that capability is now severely damaged from that attack.
Tell us how easy it really is to secure chlorine gas in a country like Syria, and how hard is it to trace its origins in an investigation like this?
Well, it's very easy to secure chlorine gas. Chlorine gas, there will be many thousands of tons of it in Syria. We know the Syrian regime bought 20,000 cylinders like the ones that we've seen off the Chinese back in 2012. But chlorine is ubiquitous all over the world. It has many other uses. As far as attributing the chlorine back to where it came from, that is more difficult. And of course, this attack was in Sarakeb, in a rebel-controlled area in Idlib, so getting the full details is difficult. But I think when you put all the evidence together, the fact that it's come from helicopters and the other bits of intelligence that no doubt the Americans, the Turkish government and others have, then it will be pretty unequivocal that the regime are responsible. And it's a classic standard operating procedure. They've used chlorine a lot because it has been very successful for them. But one hopes after the strikes, after the major Douma attack in April, that it is less likely that the regime will use chemical weapons in future.
Okay, Hamish, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us from London.